Hello, 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 everyone. This is Coach Powell. Some people call me Marv. Some people call me Big Guy. People call me the Ugly Sigma. But it's so nice to meet you guys tonight. So nice to have you aboard the show. We have a special show for you tonight. Tonight, I have two very, very special guests who I absolutely love dearly. They're such special people here in Fairfax County, where we're broadcasting from. And if you ever get a chance to know good people, what you always want to do is introduce them to other good people, right? And so I had the pleasure of introducing them to each other just earlier this evening. Tonight, we have a special guest from Fairfax County representing our diversity. She's our diversity champion. Ms. Carla Bruce has been a part of Fairfax County's wonderful team supporting the Fairfax One program and process for many years now. I've had the pleasure of seeing her present her ideas and her thoughts in many occasions. And in fact, even tonight, she's going to share some wonderful stuff with us as we celebrate and talk about the life of Dr. George Washington Carver. I've also got another special guest with you, Mr. James A. Samuel. Not only is he a special government operator here in Fairfax County, but has his own company right now, and they've got some special software that I'm sure he's going to want to share and talk a little bit about with you guys. And he has some unique experience with the Tuskegee Airmen as a former airman and pilot himself, the United States Air Force, U.S. Air Force Academy graduate, just a super guy. It's some crazy circumstances on how we all come together, which we'll share with you a little bit later. But it's amazing how wonderful it is to be in a place where, we can see some of the faces like Ms. Bruce and Mr. Samuel. So I'm glad to have them on the show today. What are we talking about? Why are we here? First of all, I need to introduce myself. I am Coach Powell. I help entrepreneurs, business leaders all over the world every day exemplify everything they need to do to focus, magnify their energy, their productivity, and their focus. That is my claim to fame. That is what I do exceptionally well. I have a show every Friday from 3 to 5 where I highlight those things for free to entrepreneurs. Just broadcast just like this one on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you haven't tuned into the show, if you haven't find out anything you want to find out about me, my information is scrolling across the screen right now. You can reach out to me. Find me at the hashtag 9Step Guru on your favorite social media program, and you'll see everything I'm up to. I'm always up to a lot of things, and I give a lot of stuff away. And it's important because I borrow a lot of who I am and what I do in business and in life from this brother we're going to introduce to you this evening. His name is Mr. George Washington Carver. Carver was a significant member of the African American community at the turn of the century. He did so much work to help African Americans in agriculture and in business find their footing, find their place, create opportunities, and do some amazing things. He was called many, many names. Some people knew him as the Peanut Man. Most of us know him. He's the Peanut Man, right? If you think about Carver, you automatically think about what he did with peanuts. But he didn't just do things with peanuts. He did things with all kinds of plants, soybeans, all kinds of processes were developed from his work with yams and everything. I mean, he was constantly inventing new ways to consider agriculture, plants, and so on and so forth. And see that one of his other nicknames was the plant doctor. He spent so much time studying plants. In fact, there were stories of him in his lifetime when he would walk in the woods every morning just to observe the plant and, as he would say, convene with God. He would spend time in meditation time, quiet time, just walking in the woods, doing the things he needed to do to understand and just get a sense for how plants grew, the sunlight, the dew, the moisture on the trees, how they grew and which directions they were growing in, and how they were affected by the rain, the weather, and so on. He did this every day, sun up, sun down, all of his early life, which led him to go to Simpson University and get his degree in agricultural sciences. And he went ahead later on to formulate in his master's degree that interest again. It was then he started to recognize that there were Black farmers that didn't understand how to deal with crop rotation, how to resurrect the soil that they had the opportunity to work on and or purchase. There were a lot of migrant farmers. There were a lot of, in fact, studies show that when he started in Tuskegee, which we'll get to in a little bit, there were 109 farmers around the Tuskegee, Alabama area where he was. By the time he ended his sojourn here on this planet and his mission to rescue Black farmers, there were well over 500 farmers locally and internationally, and he was known internationally and all over the country for his work. They called him the Black Leonardo, because not just because he was a plant doctor or significant scion when it came to understanding agriculture, he was also a painter. If you look at some of his artwork, you will see that he was fascinated by plants, not just from a scientific point of view, but also from an artistry point of view. He captured so much art. If you go down to his museum that's dedicated to him down in Tuskegee, you will see tons of his artwork, and it's all plants. I mean, everything he wanted to paint or describe all came from agriculture. And so not only was he very, very bright in terms of how to do plants and crop rotations and scientific research, he was also an artist. So they called him Black Leonardo. The scion of the South almost single-handedly rescued so many farmers, poor farmers, who didn't have the opportunity. Most of them couldn't read. They didn't understand how to read the Farmer's Almanac and really get all the lessons and things they needed to get to rescue their farms. Now, this is a significant idea. When you think about it, the Black farmers of his day, most of them were sold land that others didn't want. It was already stripped bare because of cotton. It was already bad land. Maybe it's swamp land or something that wasn't farmable. And so, but they made that land available to those who had all the former slaves who were alive and could still do something. And they spent their hard money on this land trying to make it work. And it was very difficult. It was very, very taxing. And the Carver, when he came to Tuskegee, literally, it was told by Booker T. Washington, when Booker T. Washington wrote a letter to recruit him to Tuskegee. Washington's letter said, listen, I want you to come to Tuskegee. I know you're happy where you are right now. He was at Iowa University, and he thought, he was already a professor at Iowa University. He was already tenure track. He was already accepted, the only Black person on campus. But he felt the call to come to the South and work with Booker T. Washington at Tuskegee to help the Black farmers. And the deal was literally, and he was disappointed by Dr. Washington all his life, basically, until Washington passed away. That Washington wanted to keep him in the classroom. Washington wanted to keep him working in the department. He didn't want him to do the research and work out in the community as much as he was doing. And that's what Carver was all about. He wanted to do the work in the community. He wanted to get out and do the research. And it wasn't until Washington passed that he was able to do the kind of work that he was going to do. I mean, he spent almost 35 years at Tuskegee before he had an opportunity to actually do what he felt he was called to do. And he was empowered by a wonderful person I will share with you in just a few minutes. The Wizard of Agribusiness. There is a term called chemurgy that was created by this combination of working with Dr. Carver and a man, though some of you all may know, by the name of Henry Ford. That's right. That Henry Ford decided that he respected Dr. Carver so much, and they met in a conference when Dr. Carver was coming up to Michigan to talk about agribusiness. And collectively, they began to think of different ways to use chemistry to create new products. And it became a wonderful lifelong partnership for both of them. The key elements of that collaboration, that partnership, is key. They created the term chemurgy that we now use in popular term when it comes to the mixing of science and agriculture, right? What is that all about? How do we deal with plants and crop rotation and all that kind of stuff all comes from that partnership. They had such a mutual respect and admiration from each other. You should see the letters that these gentlemen wrote back and forth with one another. And it's amazing. A former slave, which was Dr. Carver, and Henry Ford, who was just the genius that created a lot of the American industrial revolution at the time. And it's amazing how they got along and how wonderful they are. Now, of course, Carver got criticized along with Booker T. Washington for getting a little too close to the other side of the political spectrum when it comes to dealing with and how we as African Americans might deal with our economics, our economy, and how we might fit in to the larger society. And they were both accused of being soft on civil rights when it came to what was happening, what people wanted in the South versus the North. So there was a lot of back and forth between Booker T. Washington, obviously, and W.E.B. Du Bois, who coined the term talented tenth, and the Philadelphia Negro, and all of the good studies that he did. As an African American studies major at Kent State University, I got the chance to understand both of their lives and both of their contributions, and we're going to be doing a lot of work later on during Black History Month, talking about W.E.B. Du Bois's contributions. But I just wanted to share a little bit of that with you here. The common goal for both of them was to try to figure out how to use raw products, raw agricultural products, and come up with some way to industrialize those products. And for Carver, he knew that he would take this information and this opportunity back to the same Black farmers that he was dedicated to saving and helping create some type of possibility, even during the time in our country when African Americans, then known as colored folks, were escaping the South and running to the North, not just fleeing from slavery, but fleeing Jim Crow and fleeing all the oppression and the things that were left behind. But what was demonstrated with the collaboration between Henry Ford and George Washington Carver was amazing. Those two were able to collectively work together, and this was a way for Henry Ford to not just stay in George Washington Carver's good graces, but also to pour money into the research and the development that was needed to rescue those African American farmers. And Henry Ford found it very useful to play with George Washington Carver and work together with George Washington Carver, and not in exploitative way, but in an actual contribution way. He was known at the time as one of the major contributors to Tuskegee Institute, and he was able to develop a couple of research opportunities. He even started a research facility in Dearborn, Michigan, that he let Dr. George Washington Carver run during his later years as he continued to be a professor at Tuskegee University. And he was able to come and visit and work and basically run that facility. So Carver had many opportunities to leave Tuskegee to go and work in industrial America. He was an award-winning scientist, and he did so much to move things forward, but he kept to his mission his entire life. And he felt almost fatherly toward his students that he got the chance to work with for over 40 years at Tuskegee. And those students loved him and respected him and adored him. And they even responded to him and called him father, many who were fatherless as they matriculated through the institution, and some lost their parents during that process. But they adopted Carver, and Carver adopted them. He had no children. He had never married, but he fell in love with the plants and the people at Tuskegee. And that's all I'm going to say about Dr. George Washington Carver. I'm going to let Madam Bruce tell us a little bit about the really sexy stuff that's going on in Fairfax County when it comes to development and diversity, and some of the things that the county is trying to do. And then I'm going to introduce Mr. Samuels, because he has some unique stories to share with us about Carver and Carver's contribution. And other than that, I'm going to shut up, get off the screen, and bring on the stage a lady who I think needs no introduction. Carla Bruce is a supercharger and one of the best things I think Fairfax County has ever done. and we got smart enough to decide we want to have a diversity director, and we want to have somebody as sharp and as powerful as Carla Bruce. Now she joined one of those gangs. I think she's a. Are you in the same gang that Vice President in, Dr. Bruce? Or I believe you are you one of them AKAs?
I am a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Yes, I am.
Ooh, those AKAs. Okay. Carl and I go way back, and we have some deep connections. So it's very important. I'm so thankful for your opportunity to come and share with us. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to upload your PowerPoint presentation for some reason. I'm having some horrible computer problems over here on my side, so I do apologize for that. But I'm sure you can speak to the issue very well. I'm going to step out here and curate some questions just in case there are any. And if not, we're going to keep this party going. So take it away, Madam.
Well, thank you for having me tonight, Marvin. And thank you for expanding my knowledge of George Washington Carver. I think all of us are familiar with him as the Peanut Man. But this has been an opportunity for me to learn more about his legacy and beyond the ingenious work that he did in terms of uses of the peanut. Um, as Marvin mentioned, and I would make a slight correction, my title in Fairfax County is I'm Fairfax County's Chief Equity Officer. And my role in Fairfax County is to oversee in our county's implementation of what we call our One Fairfax racial and social equity policy. And the policy was adopted by our Board of Supervisors and School Board back in November of 2017. And in a nutshell, commits us to consider equity in all of our planning and decision making. And so I know tonight is really a celebration of the life and legacy of George Washington Carver. But I'm speaking to you in the context of opportunity and the contributions of Dr. Carver, but also, the Black community in general in communities and the significance of those contributions, and thinking about, the things that stand in the way of opportunity in the Black community, and how, in so many ways, people are able to overcome barriers and produce well-being, not just for themselves as individuals or for their families, but make contributions that really sustain and build our economy. And in learning more about George Washington Carver, I really came to understand how much his research really, shifted the agricultural economy in the South post-slavery and post-Civil War, and was really instrumental in sustaining that economy. Now we all know the legacy of our country and the contributions of Black people in terms of building our country's economy. Frankly, through the work of people who were enslaved, and how that sort of served as the foundation of our economy. And also, as we sort of come more to contemporary times, the ongoing role of people of color in general, and specifically Black people as workers. But I think what is really interesting about George Washington Carver's legacy, and in what we continue to see, though not always highlighted or championed, are how the brilliance of the community is also really key to creating the opportunities to build and sustain our economy. And so, what I wanted to speak to very briefly tonight is the work of Fairfax County around advancing equity and recognizing that in many ways, people have been separated from opportunity in our community, and in really recognizing the role of government in limiting opportunity. And if government has historically played a role, whether that's the federal government, or the state government, or locally, has historically played a role in creating conditions of segregation or separation, I would say that Fairfax County is really actively working to understand that historical context and make decisions now that are really proactively trying to overcome that history and to create opportunities where people have access, to create communities where people have access to opportunities and have access to the resources that will support their well-being. You know, when you think about sort of how we're doing as a community, uh, Fairfax County is a great place. We rank at the top of most lists in terms of our economy and our educational system and our health. But when you look at the data in a disaggregated way and you look at sort of who's faring well in Fairfax County and who's not, there's some predictable trends. And I'm sure over the last couple of years, you've heard lots of discussions or been a part of lots of discussions about this idea of equity and what does equity mean. And so our definition of equity is really, equity is not, it's not about a zero sum game. It's not about taking from one group to give to another group. It's really about understanding the uneven landscape that exists in our community, the uneven access to opportunity, the uneven vulnerability that is in our community, and acknowledging government's role in influencing that, and then accepting the responsibility that we shouldn't be able to predict how well people will do based on who they are, based on their race or ethnicity, and actively working to produce conditions in this community where people live in communities of opportunity, and in those communities they have access to all of the things that would create the conditions for them to live to their fullest potential. And again, thinking back to the life and legacy of George Washington Carver, one of the things that I keep going back to, what were the conditions in his lifetime, and what were the opportunities that he had access to. And so, as Marvin mentioned, he was born enslaved. He was, what I learned is actually stolen. His family was stolen from his enslaver, and his mother and I believe a sibling were never recovered. And he was actually raised in the family of his enslaver. And I would imagine that produced some opportunities for him that may not have been available to others, in that era. And then based on those opportunities, what he did, again, not for the service of himself just as an individual, but really contributing to his community and contributing to the economy, how those opportunities really did produce, build his abilities, but also enabled him to contribute in very powerful ways that made his community stronger, that enriched the lives of the students that he taught, but as we've come to understand, really transformed the economy of the South post Civil War. And so I think it's just a good story and a good way to think about the importance of access to opportunity, as well as the importance in the role of Black people, of African Americans, in terms of the contributions, again, the untold contributions. And I appreciate the gentleman of Phi Beta Sigma for really uplifting George Washington Carver's full life and his full story, because I think in many ways, sometimes history is minimized, and in many ways it goes untold. And to understand the full array of contributions that he made is really, I think, a great opportunity for us to sort of reflect on how opportunity is available in our lives or not, and what we can do and what we can really challenge our government to do, again, at the federal, state, and local level, to create through policy and practice the conditions that would promote access to opportunity and greater well-being for us as individuals, but also, again, for our communities more broadly, because ultimately that is how we are going to make change in our community, when we're all able to sort of fully realize our potential and fully contribute to the success of our communities and to our country. So I really appreciate the opportunity this evening to sort of reflect on, sort of the principles of my work, and I would say, the ongoing work of Fairfax County to be a local government that realizes the challenges of our history, but wants to, sort of think about where we are now and what we want for the future, and begin to do things differently, begin to, make bold and innovative choices, working with our community that'll really position us to sort of realize the potential of everyone that makes this county home, whether it's people and residents or the business community that makes this county home, and make sure that it's really representative of the diversity of experiences, as well as sort of the diversity in terms of race and ethnicity that make this area so unique. So Marvin, I thank you very much for the opportunity to join you this evening and participate in this conversation.
Carla, you have done just a rock solid, amazing job, as I knew you would, as you always do. When you show up, you show all the way up, and I love that about you. The county is lucky to have you, and has made a super intelligent job of bringing you on board. Of course, you like to play shy and demure, but you originated that role. Am I correct?
Yeah, I was the first chief equity officer in Fairfax County.
Yeah, baby. That's what I'm talking about. She's breaking down barriers and making amazing things happen. And not only is the county smart enough to hire, somebody like Carla, but even conducting the Fairfax One study in the first place, and I think it's originated with the schools, but in order to tremendously embrace this thought process and this notion, Carla, you were the first person to even teach me the difference between diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what those three things actually meant, and how do they show up in government and in business. And so I thank you tremendously for that, because it allowed us at the Small Business Commission to open up our minds and widen our scope in terms of how we were thinking about economic development. And that's one of the reasons why I have you here tonight, because Carver was about that. Carver was about finding ways that we could be included, finding ways that, you know, we could do it in a way that was representative of the grace and the culture that we represent as African American entrepreneurs and business leaders. So it was just a wonderful, wonderful thing. Thank you so very much. I'm going to put you backstage because I'm going to bring my next rock star up. But thank you very much. Hopefully you can hang in there for a few more minutes and we can have a robust discussion afterwards. Again, this is Carla Bruce, and she is responsible for in the county for helping us interpret and put in policy and programming the Fairfax 1 study, which is an amazing study. I'm going to repost it again for those of you all who didn't see it. If you can't see it in the chat, just to let you know, you can go out and get that, read it, participate in it. I've done so, and I have to tell you, it's amazing and eye-opening when it comes to thinking about, you know, the wealth gap and what that might mean to introduce programs and ideas that will help create more equity in our area and in where we live. Okay, next up, supercharger coming up is Mr. James Samuel. As I said earlier, Top Gun, big pilot. I love him to death. It's a funny story how we met. I was introduced to him by a wonderful client of mine who just fell in love immediately. And she's like, he's the most charming fellow you ever want to meet, Marvin, and you just have to meet him. And it's funny because she probably thinks that same way about both of us. But she was so happy to share and so happy to know that we've connected and we spent time together. We're talking business and how we can help each other, and how, most importantly, how we can support what you're doing with your business and the software, that the wonderful software you created that literally I don't think anyone should do without. I'm not going to talk a lot about that, but I'm going to let you explain that so people understand, you know, how important it is to keep your family safe and to do things that using technology that we can now have a readily available to us for no, you know, there's no reason why we can't do things to help us feel a little bit more safer. And that is super, super, super important, especially to, in my point of view, to the African American community, because there are places where we have to be for, you know, whatever circumstances we find ourselves there. And it's important that we can develop a sense of safety and a sense of connection, even when we're in places that maybe aren't as friendly or maybe even be quite hostile to us, even unbeknownst to us, right? Having the tools available to us to create that safety for our children, for our family members, and for ourselves is just incredibly important. And I think about, you know, the Freedom Riders. If they'd had the software that, you know, Mr. Samuel has helped create and bring into the universe, you know, a lot of different things would have been happening in terms of, you know, who did what to whom and where, and then what do we do about it when it's all said and done. But I'll let him explain it to you. I also have a super connection with him. His wife and I met at a chamber event, and I didn't even make the connection. I heard the name Samuel, and when I met him, I did make the connection between his wife, but I thought I'm super impressed with her because she's one of the few dentists I ever had a chance to see or work with that actually knows business, and she's a super sharp individual. I'm like, wow. And I was thinking to myself in the back of my mind as I met him, I got to introduce him to this wonderful dentist that I met, and I couldn't remember her name. Come to find out, he's already found her and married her. So it's a great thing. It's a great thing. All right. God loves a cheerful giver, so I'm going to give you Mr. James Samuel right now.
Hey, Coach Powell, thank you for that very warm introduction. That was awesome. You know, you're a brilliant man, because I always start with talking about my brilliant wife. And so that segue was awesome. She's right here.
I see.
And so there's lots of connections that are about to happen here, right? So there is Dr. Evelyn Teague Samuel and her first book, because she is the real entrepreneur in the family. I'm just, you know, I'm her stunt double. But this is her. This is her first book. Her second book is also here. It's a manifestation journal because she also has the title of being the manifester in chief for our family. And I wouldn't be here talking to you now if it weren't for her encouraging me, as only a wife can, to read more. And so the backdrop of that comment for her to me was, I like you mentioned, Air Force Academy graduate and engineer, telecommunications engineer in the Air Force. Um, was a fighter pilot, right? I flew F-15s, God's jet, because it's undefeated in combat, 104 victories, 0 losses, only airplane in history to ever have that record. And I was privileged to fly that plane, especially right after 9/11, flying patrols over the United States in the wake of 9/11 over the middle of the United States. So just an incredible time, and then going on to be an SES in the intelligence community and deploying to Afghanistan and East Africa and serving and leading teams over there. And it was after all of that in my life that my wife tells me, you should read more. And I'm like, I read a lot and I write a lot. I was the head of our congressional affairs team for my 14,000 person agency, which is what moved us to DC back in 2015. So anyway, she was right because all of the reading I had done, and the touch points to Dr. Carver are coming, but all of the reading I had done was like professional. There was no personal, no self-improvement reading. And so that cracked my mind open in ways that we're going to talk about that are truly profound. And I think Dr. Carver is honored in that notion and in that entrepreneurial spirit. And so, my background, as I mentioned, is in the federal government. And after 31 years and 9 months of that, because I started when I was 3, right? I then transitioned over to be an entrepreneur myself here in Fairfax County and take all of those decades of experience and knowledge and exposure and parlay and roll that into technology to help keep our community safe, because I focused on national security. My dad was in the military. I grew up all around the world. And then to take that national security experience and then put that into personal security tools and services for our community to help keep us safe, after helping keep our service members safe and our allies safe in foreign, sometimes, like you mentioned, hostile areas, being shot at myself in those hostile areas in Afghanistan. And so, bringing that experience to our community, back to our community, is what I did after leaving federal service, and started a company and here in Fairfax County. And so the economic development that Ms. Bruce just talked about, critical. Dr. Carver was very much about empowering us to be self-sufficient and using our talents and our tools and our gifts, right, to help uplift our community. And that's why, of course, he wanted to be out in the community so much that Booker T was hesitant to allow and to grant him that opportunity. But he stayed his course. And, I think you mentioned after 35 years of being at Tuskegee, I think he stayed there for about 40 years altogether, lived in the dorms, right? He finally got a chance to go out into the community and be around and with the people and help them understand the crop rotation cycles and help them understand, nitrogen in the soil and how to recreate that so that you can, use the land again and again and again and have it be productive and producing its fruit. So genius of a man. I'm grateful for this opportunity. Thank you, Coach Powell, for the opportunity to talk a little bit about Dr. Carver and my touch points to not just economic development and empowerment through my company, which it's Angel Tech is the name of our product, ANJEL, Angel with a J. And thank you for posting the link there, angel.live, angel.tech. But also to talk about my touch points with the Tuskegee Airmen and Dr. Carver. And so here we go. So all fighter pilots start a story like this. There I was in high school, and I'm from Alabama. I'm from Eufaula, Alabama, which is right down the road from Tuskegee. So I literally, it's my hometown, and I finished high school there in Eufaula, Alabama, just 25 minutes from Tuskegee. And so I was recruited to go to Tuskegee by a Colonel Roosevelt Lewis in high school. And I had my eyes set on the Air Force Academy because my dad was Air Force member, and I wanted to be a pilot, and so that was the route, right? If you wanted to be a pilot in the Air Force, the best way to get there was through the Air Force Academy. So that's where my sights were set, and thank God that's where I went, and that's what I achieved. But Tuskegee was calling, and I didn't know my history as well as I should have. I often think, like, what would have happened had I gone to Tuskegee? Because Colonel Roosevelt Lewis, who was the senior aerospace instructor at Tuskegee, said, "Hey, I want you to come visit me. I want you to come see Tuskegee," which I did. But I didn't know he had a special guest in mind for me and in store for me, and it was one Chief Alfred Anderson. And Chief Alfred Anderson, for those who don't know, was the chief flight instructor for the Tuskegee Airmen. He is the gentleman who taught Chappie James how to fly, Benjamin O. Davis Jr., General Davis Jr. how to fly, General Charles McGee how to fly, all of the airmen, right? Colonel Herbert Carter, Spanky Roberts, all of them, Wendell Pruitt. They all learned how to fly from Chief Alfred Anderson. He was their chief flight instructor. And so I had the lifetime honor and privilege of meeting Chief Alfred Anderson at Tuskegee. And he walked me to and around, and then another young lady walked me through George Washington Carver's museum there. And this was back in 1989, right before I graduated from high school. But there's a picture, and Marvin, you're welcome to post that at any time, and I'll keep talking to it. But I got to meet this gentleman, and it's just a profound connection point to meet the person who taught the Tuskegee Airmen how to fly before they deployed to Italy, and then and fought there in Germany and in Europe. And I didn't know who he was, right? I didn't know the enormity of that moment as a 17-year-old, 16, I think at the time, year old. I didn't know. And I look back on that moment with kind of a lifetime of regret, how things might have been different, because I wanted to fly. Now, what if he had taught me to fly? Oh my God, right? What an amazing privilege to be flight instructed by the person who flight instructed the Tuskegee Airmen. So I'm thankful for the moment to meet him. But then he told me a little bit about himself while we were there, and I come to find out that he had actually flown with the First Lady of the United States, Eleanor Roosevelt, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's wife. And you can see the picture; it's out there online, right? Of the picture of Chief Alfred Anderson in the front of his 65 horsepower Piper Cub tail dragging airplane, bright yellow. It's in black and white, but it was a yellow airplane. And then the First Lady sitting right behind him, or I think it's over this shoulder in the picture, and she is just beaming, just glowing with joy after having flown for nearly an hour, about 40 minutes was the total flight time, over Tuskegee, over Auburn, over Montgomery, and over that whole region. Chief Alfred Anderson flew the First Lady around for about an hour. But the reason she was there was very much about Dr. George Washington Carver. She was there at the university. Now, this is Chief Anderson who flew her, who mentioned it to me, but who told it in detail to Colonel Roosevelt Lewis, who again was recruiting me to go to the Air Force Academy. And Roosevelt Lewis, Colonel Lewis, just also another giant of a man. You guys are going to get to meet him, I hope, in a very profound way. The world will hopefully really soon when he finishes his memoirs. But he sat at the knee and on the laps of all these Tuskegee Airmen. So he has all their stories inside of him. And Chief Alfred Anderson gave Roosevelt Lewis the mantle and said, "Row, keep them flying." And he's the one who established the museum at Tuskegee for the airmen. Colonel Roosevelt Lewis put that museum there. If you've been to Tuskegee, or when you go and you see the Tuskegee Airmen Museum at Moton Field there, it is Colonel Roosevelt Lewis, my mentor, who put that museum there. And he's the one that Chief Alfred Anderson, he flew with Chief a lot. They flew all over the Caribbean. So he had decades with Chief Alfred Anderson. So Roosevelt Lewis tells me, like, this is how that day went. The First Lady was at Tuskegee to see the research that Dr. George Washington Carver had performed on polio. Because as you'll recall, the president, FDR, had polio. He was wheelchair bound and stricken. And the media of the day, of course, made it look like he was standing and they propped him. So you didn't really understand that he was in a wheelchair at that time, but he was in a wheelchair. And he would go over to Warm Springs, Georgia, which is about an hour or so from Tuskegee, just over north of Columbus, Georgia. And from 1924 up until he died, he would go there. Long before he was president of the United States, Franklin Roosevelt would go over to Warm Springs, Georgia, and sit in those warm springs to try to get relief from the polio that had him wheelchair bound. Dr. George Washington Carver had done research on what they called infant paralysis, and he used peanut oil and massage therapy to help rejuvenate the limbs of those who were stricken with polio. Now, he himself had been ill as a child. He had a very high-pitched voice. If you didn't know, if you've ever able to find video clips of him talking, he has a very high-pitched voice for a grown man, 6 foot or so. And that's because as a child, there's some debate about what he was stricken with, but it could have been whooping cough or whatnot. But his voice was unnaturally and abnormally high, very, very high-pitched. But he did research about curing other maladies in children, specifically polio. And with his peanut oil and the massage therapy, he had actually gifted a bottle of this massage oil to President Roosevelt before the First Lady came. She came to Tuskegee to hear from President Patterson, the president of Tuskegee at that time. He was the third president of Tuskegee after Booker T and Moton. It was Patterson. And after seeing this research and understanding how it might help the president of the United States, she then asked the president of Tuskegee University, President Patterson, is there anything else I should see while I'm here? Because Auburn University is waiting for me, and I'm really on my way there. But she spent over an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours at Tuskegee, very late to Auburn. They had to cancel some of the things they had in store for her because she stayed at Tuskegee so long. And he says, well, you should see our airmen, ma'am. They're actually flying around right now, our flight instruction school here. And she says, well, of course. So they drive her over to the field. Chief Alfred Anderson is up flying around. He lands, seeing the entourage. I think they knew she was going to be there that day. He lands, and then she is introduced to a young lady named Mildred, I believe her name, Mildred Hemmings, was up flying around solo. So a black female pilot was up flying around in her overalls. First Lady got to meet her. They talked for a bit. Chief Anderson was there. She got to meet him. They talked for a bit. And then she says to him, Chief, and I'm quoting you, I think I'm going to go for a little flight with you today. That's what the First Lady said to Chief Alfred Anderson. Her handlers lose it, right? And they're like, well, ma'am, you can't do that. And she's like, oh, yes, I can. So they run over to the nearest phone. They call the White House. They can't even pronounce where they are. They say they're in Tuskegee. Okay. They say, we're in Tuskegee. They're panicked because the First Lady is about to get an airplane with, at the time, what they called a Negro, right? They panic. They call the White House. The White House patches them over to Warm Springs, Georgia, where the president was, not too far from there, and get the president on the line and say, Mr. President, the First Lady, we're here at Tuskegee. She wants to go flying with a Negro, and says she's going to. And the president says, from Chief Anderson, who heard this, right? Because he came back to the phone. From this guy came back, the Secret Service person came back. And Chief Anderson heard the whole thing because then he took her flying, of course. And the president said, if she says that's what she's going to do, then that's what she's going to do. And hung up. And so this Secret Service person now has to run back to the field out of breath and, sheepishly say, yes, ma'am, you are the First Lady. So she gets in the back of Chief's plane. They take off and they fly for 40 minutes, come back. The picture you've seen, it's memorialized, and it's, she was so impressed with the airmen. Of course, that led to further support for the airmen and getting them funding and them going off to war and being the heroes for eternity that they are. But she wasn't there to see the airmen. That picture of her day there was in March 1941. She was there to see George Washington Carver's research. She met with a Dr. Chenault, I think his name was, on polio to help cure her ailing husband, the President of the United States, with Dr. Carver's research on peanut oil and massage therapy to cure polio or to help remediate some of the effects of polio. So I share that story with you about Dr. Carver because, he he was friends actually with the vice president, with FDR's vice president. They had met through mutual acquaintances at Iowa State University. And so he was really a giant of a man in so many ways, both in research, economic development, as we talked about, crop rotation, helping people be self-sufficient, on the model of Tuskegee and Booker T, right? Teaching people trades and helping them take care of themselves and be contributing to their community and to the world. He was an inventor, right? He had many different inventions around peanuts and sweet potatoes and yams, as was mentioned earlier. Privileged in that same vein. Another connection between me and him is this is a patent for this technology, which you just heard about. This is Angel Tech. This is also for our community. This is a live streaming personal body camera for your iOS and Android phone. This is the patent that was granted last year in February 2023 for this technology, which is what my company is producing and bringing into the world. So the link's there, angel.live, because you deserve to live, to be free, and to be fulfilled. That is completely in line with Dr. Carver's mantra and his life and his contributions. I'm privileged to know Marvin, Coach Powell, and his economic development and his business coaching. I have the ultimate business coach in my wife. She is the business coach and the entrepreneur in our family. Everything you see that I'm doing and talking to you about here is because of her mentorship and her manifesting and her business savvy, as Coach Powell just mentioned. And I'm thankful for Fairfax County and Carla Bruce and everything that the county and the state are enabling me to do to bring this to the world and to help all of us have a safer, more survivable life. All glory and all honor to God, our Father and Creator, His Son Jesus Christ, who is everything. Back to you, Coach Powell.
Oh my God. I thought you were not going to help us understand the power of Angel Tech. One of the greatest examples you gave me earlier on of how it's been used by dignitaries and how it's been used, how it can be used for personal. I mean, immediately I thought my daughter has to have this because she's living now in Harlem. She's working on Broadway, but she's not here at home. I can't see her. She's 24-year-old in the city, right? So, it's nice to know that she can have something like this, when she gets in a cab or when she is out and about town, she can share this technology. And I remember watching you use it on a run that you did not too long ago. And I thought, this is amazing stuff. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that? And then we'll beat it up a little bit about Dr. Carver.
Yeah, so thanks for that. Before I forget, my brother is a Sigma. So Keith, if you're watching, Uncle Keith, he's money on all of the interviews. He's the one who dials in and is monitoring my angel stream most loyally. It's amazing. My brother, my only brother, but he's a Sigma as well. And so, and my wife, Dr. Samuel here, is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Okay, so you see the green, and so you know what that means. And so Angel Tech. So the run I did my first marathon on the 3rd of December. So just over a month ago, I did my first marathon. I ran 26.59 miles in 5 hours and 21 minutes. So I didn't run it fast, but I finished the race, and I finished strong, and I wasn't the last one. I beat at least a few people. But I was using Angel Tech to live stream my run because it has a moving map, right? And so flying fighters, one of the things you have in a fighter is a moving map display. And so you are literally able to see where you are in real time on a map. And when you fly low level, you do something called clock to map to ground when you're navigating, and you look at the clock because physics works. And so you see, okay, I've been flying for about this long, therefore I should be at about this place. So you start with the clock, and then you look at the map to see where on the map you should be based on the time that's elapsed during your flight. It's your constant speed and whatnot. And then you look at the map and go, okay, now I should see this water tower. I should see this road, this bridge. Then you look outside and go, okay, there's the water tower, there's the bridge, or oh, it's over there, so I'm a little bit off course or whatever. So clock the map to ground is how you do it the right way. Otherwise, you get lost and you get disoriented. But anyway, Angel Tech has a moving map. And so that's one of the things that I learned as an engineer and as a pilot, of how to track your location. And I put that technology into this application called Angel Tech. And it's called Angels because he shall give his angels charge over you. They shall keep you and bear you up lest lest harm comes to you. They shall protect you. And so it's called Angel with a J. It has a moving map. It is a live streaming lifeline to your loved ones. And it broadcasts to the cloud, and then it broadcasts back out of the cloud to your viewers, and they're able to see in real time your video stream. So it's live streaming just to them. And they're also able to see a map exactly where you are, and it updates that map every 10 seconds so they can see how you're progressing, whether you're walking, running, stopping, or whatnot. And then you push the map, the iris, and it takes you from where you are, and it does a custom route right to where they are. And so it actually directs you to get to them, to send help and or to get there and intervene and provide safety yourself. So it's revolutionary. It is patented. It is unique. And we're bringing it to the world, both on a business to consumer and business to business and business to government level. Over.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to post another link to that so people can download this. You can find out more, everything you need to know without all the gobbledygook and hobbledygook. Ha! Yes, there it is. That's what I'm looking for right there. Just the link. That's all you need, people. Go get that app. If you don't have it on your phone, if your loved ones don't have it on their phone, you gotta have it. Go get it. And I think you can do it what in Facebook, not all the iOSs, right? You can use your Droid phone. You can use your iPhone. No matter what you want to have, your Google phone, whatever you have, you can use it, right?
That's correct.
Okay, awesome.
It works on both Android and iOS operating systems, and it works anywhere in the world your cell phone does. It is a global app. We have customers and users in Australia and Peru and England and Germany. And I mean, we have users all over the world, and it works anywhere in the world. And there's only a latency of about 15 seconds. So I have my friend Neil here. He travels to South America a lot. When he streams, I see him in Chile. I see him everywhere, and I'm able to text him in real time and say, "Hey, man, and it works. You're live seeing anywhere in the world what's going on to your loved ones."
So I'm going to leave that up here as we chat, and I'm so thankful that you're here in our county. You're able to share such a wonderful technology with the world, and your contribution is phenomenal. Thank you very much for your service. As a fellow veteran, I'm always excited to be able to boost our veterans and anything we can do to support those who have been willing to put their lives on the line for the freedoms that we enjoy in this great country. And so thank you so very much for all you brought to the table. Let's talk about Dr. Carver. I got to tell you, I'm impressed with so much about this man. When I first joined the fraternity, one of the reasons why I was excited to join the fraternity was the legacy that Dr. Carver left, not just the fraternity, but the entire South, because at the time at Kent State University, it was also a Pan-African Studies major. And of course, you cannot study African-American history and the contributions of the great African-American contributors to that history without bumping into that name, George Washington Carver. And it just so happened he was a Sigma man, and the brothers, of course, shared that with me at the first introductory meeting that I was able to see. Of course, they talked about all the great Sigmas, and I was like, oh my God, that's George Washington Carver. I know him. I know his work. I know what he's doing. This is incredible. I can't believe I get it. I'm joining this group, kind of thing. And one of the other things that was so powerful to me was the connection that the brothers have with business. Our first national program was our Bigger and Better Business program, which is sponsoring this talk tonight, as a matter of fact, because I'm my chapter's Bigger, Better Business chairperson. So my responsibility is to bring up entrepreneurs like yourself and to do what we can to support in the community, and put whatever you're doing in a positive light, and make sure that we broadcast this. So this particular recording is broadcast on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And anybody who wants to get to this technology can get to this technology all over the world. and we can repost and rebroadcast this over and over and over and over again throughout the year, so that people can see all the wonderful things that you're doing. So I'm very thankful for having you. What I love about Dr. Carver most is his commitment to community. At any point in time, he could have left Tuskegee, and he tried to on several occasions. You know, when he was downgraded from the department, he was not necessarily able to grow the department agriculture and that he in the way he wanted to. But in spite of the controlling nature of Booker T. Washington, I'm going to say it that way, he hung in there because he was still able to sneak off every once in a while and do some work in the community and stuff like that, which that's what he was committed to. When Booker T. Washington recruited him, he said, listen, I can't pay you. I can't make you any more famous than you already are. But what I can do for you is give you an opportunity to work in the community. And that's what excited Carver to come to Tuskegee in the first place and add his legacy. I don't know whose legacy is bigger, whether it's Carver's or Booker T. Washington's, but it's an interesting thought process, because what I do know about George Washington Carver was a deeply spiritual man. And there's been many historians who spoke about his understanding of the Bible was legendary, you know, in terms of how he used his spiritual connection to drive and motivate him. And I think that is something about that connection and that desire for equity we could learn from today, which is exactly why, you know, I have you two both on the show, is because I think you are modern day examples of what equity means and how we can use it to produce more in all communities, you know. And that, again, that's one of the things that Carver was about. He wasn't just about the black farmers. He was about any poor farmers who needed to learn how to develop their crops and their products. He answered maybe 8 to 10 letters every day for as long as he lived, from people all over the world who were asking him questions about crop rotation. One of the other big lessons I learned from his life is his understanding of rest, how important it was to rest, pray, and meditate. Every night he would read those letters before he went to bed, and he would even wrote about this. He was like magic. The next morning, I would wake up with the answers to the problems that farmers all over the world were facing. And they felt comfortable writing him, and he wrote them back. That was sort of the key to his extension, because he didn't have the internet at the time. He didn't have these tools that we have. He just had to write letters. So imagine writing 8 to 10 letters, answering questions from people all over the world every day, you know, for a good 30, 40 years of your life. What does that do for you, you know, and mentally and emotionally? He had to be strong, you know, to do that and to face the oppression that he had to face even as a young man. But to get through that, he used his intellect to literally charm his way into opportunities that others could never do, because they just weren't as bright, and they just weren't as forefront, and they just weren't as committed to the work. What would you guys think? What do you think in terms of what you've heard, or what you think is the most impressive things about Dr. Carver? And I'll let Carla go first, because I know she has to go.
Yeah, well, I've learned so much this evening from both of you about Dr. Carver. You know, what I think is most impressive is what you just mentioned, Marvin, is that you know, he used his skills and ability to help others. And again, there were no boundaries to who that was. And I think sometimes in a, you know, in a society like ours, and you know, sort of driven by capitalism, and you know, if you have something that you know that you know, in you're looking to profit, you know, from it, in you know, in the way that he, you know, helped people to, you know, improve their situations, to solve problems that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to solve. And I just think about how, you know, with that tool in today's society, what he could have turned that into, um, in sort of what he the value of just that, you know, helping fellow man. And I really do think that's, you know, missing, um, in our society today. Not that people shouldn't be looking for opportunities to, you know, leverage their gifts and talents to bring fortune to them. But we don't solve our problems in isolation, right? We solve our problems sort of in a collective way. And I think so many of the social challenges that we face, there's actually solutions to them. Um, you know, it's just that there's an orientation to hoard and to keep, you know, and to try to acquire, versus figuring out that I don't lose anything when I help you, or when you get what you need. In fact, we both gain. Our tagline for One Fairfax is, "We all do better when we all do better." And it gets to that whole notion of a zero sum, you know, this is not a zero sum game. Like this is, you know, I can grow and you can grow. Um, and if we're both growing, that's good for everybody. And I think that his life example just is, you know, just really is a good testament to that. So that's what I would say is sort of the what's resonating most with me tonight.
Fantastic. You know, my brothers would be so upset with me if I did not mention that our motto, culture for service, service for humanity, is literally the wind beneath our wings. It's what makes us tick. It's what drew me to this organization and this opportunity, because joining like-minded individuals who want to uplift the community at large and at home. You know, that's what we want to do. That's why we're here. We're not here to be individuals. We're not here to be separatists. We're not here to, you know, do anything other than uplift the community and the culture. And so it's a great opportunity. Thank you so much for sharing that, Carla. And Carver obviously reflected that very well. Okay, Brother Samuel, what do you think are the greatest? If you had to pinpoint one thing that you're really, really impressed with Brother Carver, and Carla, you don't let us know when you have to go. You know, and we'll say goodbye and wave you off whenever that time comes. Mr. Samuel, go ahead, take it away.
You know, it is that that service, right? Service to others, as the Bible says, "Let you know he who desires to be greatest among you be your servant." And so his service to his community, his service to his culture, his service to farmers, his service to humanity, his service to science, that's what makes him great, is that service. And the fact that he communed with nature and communed with God, and you know that daily communing is another thing that made him great. Jesus did that, right? He would go away into the wilderness and pray and commune, and that was the inspiration. That's where he tapped into the source, right? He was that prayer time, right? And so that is also what made him great. And then the fact that he read and reply to those letters each day. I mean, that from a business standpoint, that is great customer discovery, right? That's how you really hear the problems of your constituents, of your customers, of your users. And in a lean startup kind of a way, you have to do that. You have to continuously do that in order to really stay grounded in the truth of your user experience, right? If I can use some business jargon here, you got to really know what your customers are facing in your product and in your service, or both, or either. And the fact that he did that in a 1940s kind of a way, a 1930s kind of a way, just also he was a business genius and a giant, and he just had it all, right? From a human standpoint, from a business standpoint, from a scientist standpoint, he was great in all of those different ways. And so that, for me, is all the marks of greatness are in him, and you can see it. You know, that the fruit of his tree is evident to all of us.
I wanted to share some of his famous quotes with you guys this evening, but I'm not able to get my technology to work with me the way I want it to work with me. In fact, I see that I'm hesitating on the screen right now, but hopefully my voice is coming through clear. The point that I think Carver made better than almost anything else he did in his life, was that value of connection with others and with nature and with God. His ability to, see the problems and his talent as the solution to the problems. He one of his quotes was something to the effect of, use your talents for the greater gift of mankind, but never be satisfied. Always look for the deeper question, the deeper answer, and never be satisfied. Which I think, man, that's a stressful thing, because all of us want to get to a place where, can we just be happy? Can we just be joyous? Can we just celebrate? Can we just revel in what we've achieved already? Carver would probably say, no, there's more work to be done. You should ask the deeper question: could it be better? Could we do better? Could we be better? And for him, that was the celebration. It was looking for better, was what he wanted to do and what he wanted to share and show to the universe. He wrote letters to Henry Ford for 3 years before they met. Now, again, in today's well-connected world, we can reach out to each other on social media. We can connect and share each other's profile and history, and even watch videos of it. I watch videos of you doing the run, right? And so we can do things now. Again, like what Carla said, we have this technology that connects us in such a broader, better way. But behind that ability to connect has to be the passion and the desire to do more. Carver shared what he was doing with everyone. He didn't discriminate. He shared what he was doing with everyone, and by doing so, elevated not just himself, not just Tuskegee, not just the local farmers that he was working with, but the entire world. I mean, like I said earlier, today is a national holiday. Now, it's not federally recognized as a day off of work, but it is recognized federally as a national holiday. And very few people even know that, even when they know the contributions that George Washington Carver made. When his death happened, they heard about it all over the world. It was broadcast on the radio, came over BBC. Some of the soldiers that were stationed then in Northern Africa heard about it, and they heard that Dr. Carver had passed away. Some of the Black soldiers who had the privilege of working with him at Tuskegee. And they were devastated, because this man, who a lot of the students who ever worked with him knew him as their father figure. Not only was he a father figure, he was like, how people say sometimes you get to choose the family that you embrace as an adult. You don't get to choose the family you're born into, but you get to choose the people that you call family as you move throughout your life. And so many people called him daddy, you know, and he had no children of his own. It was, to me, that kind of commitment to staying connected with those students that literally extended his tenure as a professor at Tuskegee, because whenever he got into philosophical troubles with the department or jealousies from other department leaders at Tuskegee, you know, they couldn't replace him because he was literally the most popular professor there. I mean, it's like, you know, oh, it's no way for him to bow out. Even when he tried to quit, you know, students were like, yeah, you can't, we need you. Even students who are already gone, like, you can never leave Tuskegee, you know, kind of thing. I'd love to have people say that kind of stuff about me, you know, in my life. I know that for sure, just because, you know, not because I work so hard for the community as much as when you have that kind of meaning and that kind of significance and relevance in life, what a joy to do the work that you get to do. I told you guys earlier, I'm going to be talking to the NAACP for Black History Month real soon. I'm going to be talking about the contribution of W.E.B. Du Bois and the founder of Black History Month. His name escapes me for some reason right now. I'm having a
Carter G. Woodson.
Senior moment. Dr. Woodson, yes. And what the with the organizations that are sponsoring this, including the links Jack and Jill and NAACP want me to talk about, is literally the difference between the responsibility of the talented 10 and the opportunity of belonging to the talented 10, and helping people understand that there's more of an opportunity than there is a responsibility, and to see that opportunity. So it's a lot of fun. Listen, thanks so much for coming on board. I'm going to close the program out real soon. If there's no questions from the audience, and understand we'll be able to broadcast this for forever. This will live on the internet, you know, and you're on YouTube and Facebook. It's there for download, rebrand, reloading, uploading, whatever you want to do. I'm not going to close the content off. I'm going to share with everybody who wants to join in and participate. Any last thoughts that you want to share with our audience before we get out of here?
You know, just gratitude, Marvin, you know, just gratefulness, just thankfulness, just gratitude for your contributions, for your invitation, for your grace and extension of this platform to me, you know, and to my company and our technology and our community. Just thankful, and just want to bless you and bless your audience and anyone under the sound of my voice, just to embrace their purpose and to embrace their creator, our creator, and to serve one another. And, you know, I'm just thankful to be here with you to have this conversation about a great man who did just that, and Dr. George Washington Carver.
I see a couple of my brothers have signed on and logged on. I see you out there, Brother Thornton, and a couple of other ones from Facebook and YouTube. Really appreciate you guys showing up. I know it's Founders Day. I know there's a lot of activities going on out there that we could be participating in. And so I'm glad you took the time to stop by and share some love with us. It means a tremendous amount to me. For all of you who are paying attention, if you have any questions about anything that is about your performance or your development professionally, throw them in the chat. It doesn't matter when, if you're watching this on demand or you're watching this live tonight, throw those questions out in the chat. You never know who in our community can come to your rescue, come to your aid, support you in ways that you need to be supported. And that's what we're all about here, especially my brothers at Phi Beta Sigma, the Bigger and Better Business Program. We're all about our economic development, making sure that we're doing things to promote jobs, to promote business, to promote access to opportunity for as many people as we possibly can. And so let's get this party started and let's keep it rolling all year long. This is 2024. I hope you all are having a wonderful start to what is the best new year of your life. I know I am already. With this program and other things that we're doing, this is going to be the best year. I wish you all the absolute best. I'm going to sign off now. Mr. Samuel, if you could stay behind for a second, that'd be great, because I need to talk to you about a couple things, so don't go anywhere. But I'm going to formally sign off. Again, this is a program of the Bigger and Better Business Community of Phi Beta Sigma Theta Tau Sigma chapter in Northern Virginia. We are the Northern Virginia Sigmas. So glad to have you all on. Those of you who are watching it live, those who are watching it in on demand or in recording later on, or rebroadcasting, however we're going to do this, repurpose this material. We've learned a lot today about the Scion of the South. We've learned about Dr. George Washington Carver, the Peanut Man, the person who is literally responsible for rescuing Black Southern agriculture between 1930 and 1950. There's no one who did more to help Black farmers to increase their productivity, to find different ways of managing their crop rotation, to develop the soil, to make that soil profitable and useful, and then create opportunities and economic advancement for people. Like I said earlier, when Dr. Carver first got started, there were 100 farmers in the local area. There's over 500 after he finished. And he was a man of the community, a man of science, a genius in art and intelligence, and a superstar in our country that should be celebrated over and over again, and not just on January 5th. All right, so signing off, guys. Thank you so very much for coming on. Those of you who are watching the show, continue the questions, continue the comments, continue engaging in this content, and we'll continue to bring you great stuff. Thank you so very much. It's Coach Powell signing off. You all have a good one.